within 24 hours of each other. Donald Trump says we have secret weapons that nobody even understands. Trump chooses his words very carefully. You can always tell when Trump gives a little bit too much and then pulls back. He says we have weapons that no one even understands, which is an interesting way to talk about a weapon, and that is more powerful than anything on Earth. Now, this is a president who regularly talks about nuclear weapons and their capacity. He does so in a very different tone. On the heels of that, Ashton, we have the White House chief technologist saying we can annihilate distance. We can manipulate time and space. Sure as hell sounds like teleportation technology to me, as somebody who's just reading the literal words. Here they are. But again, I haven't made a career looking into this stuff. Can you please unpack this for me?
Sure. Yeah, the Trump thing, I mean, he's telling the absolute truth when you hear him say, we have stuff that nobody understands. And when he just does a shrug and says, yeah, nobody's going to do anything. I mean, that is the most confident thing that I've ever seen Trump do. That would scare me if I was one of our adversaries. He's not exaggerating at all. If anything, he got talked to after that, and they said, hey, dial it back a little bit. You're letting a little bit too much information out there. And then when Krastios, he's the science and technology advisor to the president. He has this letter. I read it, I thought it has to be out of context somehow. It's actually even crazier in context. He says, we have stagnation was a choice. He's saying that we said, you know what? We've got to slow our technology down because we found this technology that's so powerful, we're not ready for it. And he comes out and he said, we're capable of so much more. And like you said, it leaves distance annihilated. People are out there coping, saying that he's talking about telephones and the internet. He's not talking about telephones and internet. He was talking about propulsion and transportation right before that. It really can only be one thing. And manipulating time and space is manipulating gravity. They're one and the same. This was so on the nose. The reason why everybody's reaching out to me today is that it almost feels like he's directly talking to me. When you look at this quote right here, like you said, what comes to your mind? Manipulating time and space, gravity manipulation, leaving distance annihilated, teleportation, allowing things to grow. There's this weird connection to plasma and like plants growing faster. The way he phrases it, there's not like a business growing. It's like something actually literally growing. And then productivity, AI. AI. When I think of productivity, I think of AI. So for me, looking at this, I don't see another context that this makes any sense, which makes it so mind-blowing. I think that we are getting soft disclosure. They're warming us up to some of these ideas of advanced technology existing beyond our paradigm.
Again, you're just blowing my mind here. I suppose this would be the right time to. So I want to get to this video, but I wanted to begin with just building the foundation. That this is something that the White House is now openly talking about, and that these are very serious people and professionals and the most powerful people on Earth. You've never heard Trump talk like this about nukes. You've never heard White House technologist chiefs talk about annihilating distance or manipulating time. Those words have never been spoken. Now they're saying it. So you're saying they're soft prepping us for perhaps an introduction to this technology. What would that look like?
Let me say this. I said this on live stream yesterday. I have seen an email that was Marco Rubio was on it. He's currently the Secretary of State. He was the senator at the time I saw the email. And that email indicates that he was essentially briefed about these videos. I'm not going to say exactly what's going on in the email because it will go back to my source, but email shows Marco Rubio knows about these videos, knows about MH370, and knows about the technology at play, including the origins of this technology, which goes back to like the Soviets in the 70s, scalar weaponry and technology like that. There are other people on the email I'm not going to mention right now. The other thing I want to say is that I know for a fact that the administration knows about this stuff, not just from the Marco Rubio stuff as well. Like, just imagine a scenario in which there is, let's say, a military member who maybe they're in the administration, maybe they're not, but they've been exposed. They've seen stuff that they know isn't normal technology, but they're not read in on it. And they need someone to understand, how is this possible? I need to be able to go to meetings where people know about this stuff, and I got to be able to play along. And so, you know, you imagine, well, who are they going to call to figure out, hey, how would this stuff theoretically work? Probably someone like me. So I'm just throwing out there that I know for sure the administration knows about this. And here's the big rub about it. Why are people not making money off of it? Why are they not selling it? Why are they not making it apparent? This is national security. We can't beat around the bush on this. When you talk to Anapolina Luna and the other congressmen and stuff like that, they know it's national security as well. When those people are doing the UFO hearings, they know that the energy source is national security. The moment you see those orbs of plasma circling around the plane, in order to create the plasma ball where it's structured and not just dissipating like a lightning strike would, they've already cracked fusion. This means that they have perfect control over plasma to the point where why are we making fusion reactors with these big metal donuts? They can make fusion happen just with a ball of plasma floating around in the sky. That's what those orbs indicate right there. This just completely, speaking of the word annihilate, annihilates the whole UFO community narrative. Is that the reason why they've been hiding this stuff isn't because of aliens. It's because they've figured out what we would call free energy. They've cracked fusion. They figured out how to get energy just from the hydrogen atom. And the way they're doing it here is something called a low energy phase transition. The crazy part is everyone thinks you need this huge amount of energy to create a wormhole. But look at the temperatures of those orbs. The temperature on that thermal, they're green, blue. They're like the background temperature. If that was like a sun or a star, it's going to be white hot. So actually, those orbs at a relatively low energy temperature or low energy level, and then they're going down instead of up when they converge on the plane. You guys can even ask Grok this. Here's the craziest part. When I asked AI about this, just fed the scenario. These are double layer plasma balls, meaning you have a positive and negative charge that are separated in your plasma ball, causing it to act like a lightning strike. When they converge, their energy levels increase, and they act like the sun, where the magnetic fields, if you look at the magnetic fields in the sun, and they break and they twist, same thing's happening with those orbs. When they reconnect, there's a massive release of energy, and this causes space-time to break down. When space-time breaks down, and this is going to be very scientific, but the refractive index of the medium, the rate at which light moves through the medium, changes. And when the refractive index changes, the ground state of the hydrogen atom, so the hydrogen atom's ground state is here. When you manipulate space-time and you squish it together, the ground state of the hydrogen atom goes down. And because of this change, there's a release of energy. The previous ground state of the hydrogen atom, let's say it was 13.6. That's the ground state of the hydrogen electron. It goes down to minus 20. There's a difference now of minus 7 electron volts per electron. That is a negative energy event. So what they're doing, they're squeezing space-time down right there. What this does is it causes the energy, the ground state of the energy levels of those plasmas to go down, and this releases ultraviolet radiation. Why is that that zap black right there? Because ultraviolet radiation is not visible in thermal. That's why it's black. And in the other video, you can see a flash of light. That light being ultraviolet and black is basically the dead giveaway that this is a negative energy event. That's a real wormhole.
So they choose their words carefully, especially somebody who read this speech, and it's on camera. This is totally real. This is from the White House's website. This guy is a very serious person who gave this speech. And so he chose the word annihilate there. And I'd like to focus in on that. Leave distance annihilated. The definition of annihilate: to destroy utterly, to obliterate, nothing left. This is Oxford. So it's not that we've shortened distance, like we've made a really fast plane. Okay. It's not like we're condensing distance, like we're breaking distance barriers, like sound barriers or so on. We're destroying distance doesn't mean anything anymore.
Correct.
Am I following what he's saying there correctly?
Distance is an illusion. So the former director of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, the secret projects where they do all the secret advanced stuff, back in the 90s, Ben Rich, he said straight up, we have the ability to do anything you've seen on science fiction, anything you've seen in the shows. And so somebody asks him, how is this possible? How would teleportation be possible? And he says, how is ESP possible? And the guy responds, time and space or distance is an illusion? And he says, exactly. What we think of as distance is an illusion. And how do you unify all of these concepts? You say, oh, there's an extra dimension of energy all around us all the time. In fact, this extra dimension of energy gives space-time its form. What we see all over around us isn't nothingness. We are in a medium of energy. We just don't see it because it's quantum. It's invisible. Just like magnetism. Magnetism exists. We don't see it, but we can see the effects of it. That is also true of the zero-point energy. And you're seeing Dr. Greer here speak. I've actually watched a lot of the interviews he's done with engineers, including people like Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, for example, that are government black project physicists and engineers. And they explain this concept clearly. If there is this energy all around us, and we're in this medium of energy, then the thing that physics has gotten wrong, the classical physics and academia has gotten wrong, is they think that this zero-point energy is insignificant. They think there's nothing there that you can tap into. That when you get to zero, that's it. But the Casimir effect and various other experiments about zero-point energy show it's not nothing. In fact, it might be a significant amount of energy. So what we think of as zero is not the bottom. And if that's the case, that means not only can you make an explosion where you add energy to a region, you can remove energy from a region. So I brought an analogy for you here. Imagine this sponge is a region of space-time, a cube of space-time. If I were to look at this, I would go, well, it just looks normal. I don't see anything in this sponge. It's empty, right? It's just a sponge. I don't see anything dripping off of it. But what happens if I squeeze that region of space-time? Now the water drips out. So what would happen if I were to squeeze a region of space-time down? All the molecules would come together. They would get closer together to one another. Potentially it would create fog, condensation. Well, it turns out those MH370 videos, that's exactly what we see pulling the orbs forward. So this idea of having this zero-point energy that's a meaningful amount and tapping into it, that's negative energy. That's the way you make a warp drive. The whole thing, the only thing we had to understand, space is not actually empty. And if that's the case, we can swim through it the way that we do with the submarine by pushing it around. And the way we push it around is magnetohydrodynamics, magnetism. You
referenced the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, and I watched that video in show prep. And the guy says, we have Star Wars technology or Star Trek technology. Yep. Now, he's saying this in like the 90s or the early aughts, which like, he's not talking about laser weapons, because we've had those since the 40s and 50s. We've had weapons that can be mounted and used as laser. That's not what they're talking about. If you're talking about like an actual Star Wars or Star Trek technology, you got to be talking about, and you're not talking about space flight, because we've also been able to do that, right? Since the 60s and since actually the late 50s. And so if there's a guy who's a part of this Black Ops program telling us about 2 decades ago, we have Star Trek technology, it sure stands to reason that it'd be something like this. Not like we have a laser or we have a spaceship, because that's not something secret at all. And so then it begs the question here, Ashton, which is the applicability of this suddenly makes all militaries obsolete. Okay, so I can just take your fleet of airplanes and zap them. I could take your aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier, obviously the most useful weapon in modern warfare. I think you could say, arguably, to project power. You could just like those become obsolete. Is that what you're saying? We could transport our weapons into mainland China, right? Like without anybody seeing or knowing. Is this the application?
Yeah. It's even crazier than that. It's hard to even fully grasp what we're talking about here, because there is absolutely no challenge to the United States if we have this weaponry, unless somebody else has this weaponry as well. Submarines, every submarine on planet Earth, its location is known exactly. This technology, we can, like with this same exact quantum technology that would be used to control the orbs, you can basically map the entire planet, including underneath the water, inside buildings, just like the Dark Knight, where they can see everything. There's no hiding anywhere. Your aircraft carriers, obsolete, useless. Your nuclear weapons, not only can we warp them and teleport them back onto you, and there's no stopping the phase transition, no stopping it showing up on you, we can hit it with a directed energy weapon from space the moment the ICBM takes off. and blow up your nuke or make it inert, whatever we want to do. Nuclear weapons are not only obsolete, but they're actually a liability. If our adversaries want to make nuclear weapons, go nuts. They have absolutely no chance at all. And this is why we've basically been projecting power across the entire world for the last, 70 years. And nobody has ever even dared to challenge us because they would get annihilated. And so why did we do that to that airplane? Everybody always asks me that.
Please.
Truthfully, I don't know all the motivations, and I can't pretend to be a deep state evil person that thinks that we're going to just zap civilian airliners. But I imagine they're doing it as a show of force. I mean, sure, there's people on that plane that they don't want to get to China or the technology, but we're doing that to show our adversaries what we can do. They don't want to. We didn't want them to see this video, because if they see this video, they can figure it out, because I figured it out. What we wanted them to know is that we made a plane disappear, and we can make them disappear too. Because if you're Putin or you're Z or whatever, and you get on an airplane and you know that we did this to an airplane and we lied to the world about it and everybody believed some bullshit story about going to the South Indian Ocean, you'd be terrified every time you get on an airplane. And you're not going to mess with us. And that's why Trump is going, we got stuff so far beyond them, so they're not going to do anything. That's why he's doing the shrug.
I mean, what? And the people who are building this, right? The Lockheed, Skunk Works, and Black Ops, the people who were presumably would be a part of the build for this, those people are saying that it's Star Trek technology. I mean, dude, they're using Star Trek, so it's like, what technology exists in Star Trek every episode, every movie? Yes,
and they're gatekeeping too. So I want to point out a few other people, because people need to know, who are these people gatekeeping? Al Puthoff is the #1 world's leading expert on zero-point energy. He's also the government's #1 Black Project physicist. I was talking to AARO, the one that you're probably talking, you know about them, they're the UFO investigating people. The AARO guy is going like, Al Puthoff is a legend. I like respect him and all this stuff. And I'm going, what? Why do you connect to this guy? And then the other guy is his right-hand man is Eric Davis. Eric W. Davis is the world's leading expert on warp drives and wormholes. They've got multiple papers that were declassified. Like, the government's going to come out when this is all true, and everybody starts getting mad about how they've been hiding warp drives from us. And they're just going to go, we weren't lying to you. We've been telling you. We got all these papers that are out there. You just ignored them. You said they weren't real. Salvatore Pais's patents, 5 Navy patents that explain the balls of plasma. Everybody says, oh, no, they're not real. The Navy was battling the patent office, having their lawyers say that stuff's real. The rest of the world just ignores it. So I think it's really a question of, like, when are we going to wake up? And when are we going to be ready? This is Tesla-level technology that has been out there for 100 years. Tesla knew that this zero-point energy was out there. He called it radiant energy because it was before quantum mechanics was even a thing. Tesla invented all the power we use today, 3-phase alternating current. The secret, he told us, energy, frequency, and vibration. The frequency and vibration part is the part that we've forgotten about. We're sitting here just trying to bash things together, and what we should be thinking is like a swing. When you push a swing, do you just constantly push the swing? No. You wait for the swing to come back, and then you push the swing. Imagine if we did that with energy. Free energy.
Maybe that's why it's been kept secret, because you'd reorder the entire economy of the world in a heartbeat, right? Like, you'd
imagine the implications.
Trillion dollar industry's gone, like that. Like, right, if you did this incorrectly, then it's like $1 trillion industry's gone forever, right?
You have the money side of it. What would happen if we have, even if it's not absolutely free, but extremely cheap energy, 10 times cheaper than what we have right now? How many industries get wiped out overnight? What happens to the stock market? You could argue 50 or 60% of companies immediately, their future prospects go to zero because their industry is completely obsolete, given this new technology. And so I like to steel man the other side of it, even though I'm on the side of disclosures. Why would they hide it? There's actually some really good reasons. You could say, well, the disruption of it, the mental toll people are going to have. There are people that told me they would end their lives if it turns out that I'm right. That's a scary thought for me, just because of all the brainwashing that we've been succumbed to. And then also the part that really, I think, I'm surprised a lot of people don't understand, but I think that physicists will realize this here, if you take this to its logical extreme, the technology we're seeing, it's the end of the world. Scale this up. Why? If we can make negative energy, it's basically like cheating the laws of physics. And that basically opens the door to infinite destructive potential. So theoretically, you could make a black hole using the same exact science. And these would be the reasons why they're hiding. It's not just because they're evil. is that they've looked at all the reasons. They said this is too disruptive. And I actually agree with them. The only reason why I still push for disclosure is because we teleported a civilian airliner. The videos leaked on the internet, and everybody's just been ignoring it. So nobody's going to probably ever face accountability for what we did to that plane. Let's just be realistic. The only punishment they may ever face is that those videos get exposed and that technology gets exposed.
Where'd the plane go?
It's a good question, and I can't obviously know for sure, but we have a pretty good idea. You guys were showing the image earlier that this plane is getting teleported to the west somewhere, not to another dimension, not to another galaxy, but somewhere else on Earth. The phones were still ringing days later, and these islanders saw the plane flying towards Diego Garcia. They were dismissed because the plane was coming from the wrong direction. But they had a very detailed sight, and they definitely saw the plane. So as you can see on this map here, we believe the plane was getting teleported to the Nicobar Islands, which was the same location where they claimed the plane just took a turn to the South Indian Ocean and just flew to the South Indian Ocean. So it's like the exact right location for some mysterious event to happen in the flight path. And then it gets teleported to the west. And we can tell there's a right-hand rule in electrical engineering that would tell us this plane should be going backwards based on the orientation of the spin of the orbs around the plane, which is, I don't know, it's speculative. But you can also see the plane in the frame before the zap opens up. You can see the plane looks like it gets pulled backwards a little bit. So it would indicate that the plane actually went backwards somewhere. Now, the best theory we have is there's a fourth orb that determines where the plane comes out. So, you know, the plane's flying along, and the analogy would be it's flying along, and then it zaps away, and then it comes out over here somewhere else, right? The fourth orb, the idea would be that 3 of these orbs are negatively charged. Think of everything as positive and negative. And if you add all 3 orbs up, you imagine it gives you 1 negative charge. Then the fourth orb is 1 positive charge somewhere else, and they're entangled together. So that when the zap happens, the orbs shoot together, and then because their charges equalize, they just dissipate. So what you're left with is you have 3 orbs spinning around your plane teleports, your plane comes back out at the location of where the fourth orb was, and now all 4 orbs are gone. They've all just dissipated because of the equalized charge. That's what I think is happening here, and I think the plane somehow ended up at Diego Garcia, either was teleported directly there or teleported near there and flew down there, because the only place you can hide a plane of this size is going to be a military base. You can't hide it on any commercial airport. So either they sunk it in the water somewhere else where we've never found it, or they took it apart at that base and threw some pieces in the water that ended up showing up in Africa.
Would the people on the plane be dead when this happened? Would they be alive?
Yeah. Sadly, I think they probably were dead, because if you look at the videos and you do a deep dive in the case, you're going to find that it wasn't a pilot suicide thing or anything like that. It was a fire. It was an emergency event. It was lithium-ion batteries on the plane. That's what caused the plane to go dark. You can see the smoke in the videos. You can see the smoke coming out of the back of the plane in the videos. We had a witness that was there. Catherine T. saw the smoke coming out of the back of the plane, and we had a China Times report of the plane disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing at the same time we're seeing these videos. So the problem is, if there's lithium-ion battery smoke on this plane, those passengers probably did not last for, I think it's about an hour and 20 minutes from when the plane went dark to when these videos are being taken. So sadly, while you could survive this type of wormhole event, they are humanly traversable, at least in theory. The smoke is probably the bigger danger. And that might indicate why nobody ever came forward in the last 11 years to go, hey, I was on that plane and I'm still alive. That's never happened.